What is going on, everyone? Tutorial Tim here at Design Academy, and today we're going to be talking about building out the foundation and specifically going over text legibility and how important that really is to ensure we're using the proper color values. So in this tutorial, we'll be overviewing the text legibility on Material Design's website. So here it discusses the legibility standards, and in the previous video we went over the Leonardo color tool, and we discussed briefly about the setting contrast ratios or utilizing this tool to get the proper contrast ratios, and we're going to talk about why that's important in depth. And here we have some very important articles that I recommend you reading. And this related article is on Material Design's website covering accessibility in general. I highly recommend you go through that in its entirety. So here it talks about color and contrast can be used to help users see and interpret apps content and how it's used heavily across any and every interface for applications you'll be building. And not only the color and contrast, but also talking about the layout and typography as well. I recommend you reading through that on your own, and we'll be touching on the WCAG standards, and WCAG stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And for those of you who do not know, this requires AA compliance, WCAG AA compliance, with a ratio of 4.5 to 1 color contrast between text and backgrounds on normal typography. Normal typography being your body copy, such as the body copy in this website that I'm highlighting, and also a ratio of 3 to 1 with utilizing large text. So large text could be these headers, ensuring that they have a contrast ratio of 3 to 1. And here you can see it's practically black on a white background, so those contrast ratios will be very, very strong. And we'll go ahead and just kind of go through text on background, since that's basically what our typography will be on. It'll be on a background on a variety of components. As you can see here in this image, this text is on a app bar, and it's on the app bar's background color. And you'll notice as well here we have a notification banner of sorts where typography is overlaid on the background color of the notification. And one thing to cover that is very important is talking about how the text opacity is applied in Material Design, as they heavily rely on it to indicate states. So again, black text is recommended for use on light backgrounds and white text on dark backgrounds, which is important to note, especially if you're building your app for a light theme or a dark theme. Just make sure that the text is available with proper contrast ratios as stated up here. And we're going to go ahead and talk about building some of this out, some examples. And now that we've kind of went over using text opacity, or over how it's used in the screenshot and how to avoid utilizing it, here you can see this typography doesn't change the opacity of the text's color. But here you can see that the opacity has been modified, therefore giving off an opaque gray color, which isn't legible and very difficult to see on colored surfaces, as you can see. And next we'll talk about dark text on light backgrounds. So Material utilizes these principles. So you could think of this as the active state if you want to, or if you want to apply high emphasis on certain information. Maybe you want to apply high emphasis on headers, for example, such as this website. Utilize the color black with an 87% opacity. And then if you want to apply medium emphasis, which could be medium emphasis such as typography, or a default state for typography within a component, you utilize the color black at a 60% opacity. And then the disabled state utilizes an opacity of 38% with the color black. And we'll go ahead and talk about how to sparsely use colored text on top of backgrounds. So colored text typically isn't used everywhere, and it's used selectively to draw attention and apply very selective emphasis. So ideally, color text should be reserved for text elements such as headlines, buttons, and links. And here you can see cautious usage of color across the typography. Here you can see yellow and black and this pink purple background It's just highly not recommended. I wouldn't even recommend this as opposed to being cautious. Just beware if you're questioning a certain design element such as this, it's better off not utilizing that and sticking to standards. And here you can see large headlines and short text snippets are best for colored text. And next we'll go ahead and talk about helper text. And helper text basically gives context about a field's input, such as how the input will be used, and it can adopt brand colors as well, but should be legible by all means according to WCAG standards. And again, it utilizes the same principles. The only difference is helper text utilizes a 60% opacity of the color black, and then error text uses a 100% opacity of the color red. And you can see that hex value right there. So where would you actually see this? Well, you could see this in Material Design's text input field. So if we actually go to components here and go to, and we search for text input, let's see if we can find that text field here, text fields, and we can select the specs. You'll notice that there is an error message here for this image, for this text input field, which is utilizing the error text here, this color property applied to typography, to give context about that field's input, which is right here. So this was the wrong input by the user in this example, and there's some error message that appears. And then in this text field, it has some helper text that is indicated right there, which is reflected right here in this text type, this variant of helper text, which is very important. And we can also discuss selected text next. So selected text can reflect your brand, and it can utilize an accent of your primary or secondary color. And this should be legible against the selection color, and the selection color should contrast the background color. So that is something important to note. Here you can see that Material Design is using the primary variant color for the highlight, for the text selection color, highlighting all the selected text. And also another important thing to note is that icons and other symbols utilize the same principles for representing icons and other symbols as typography. And when I say typography, I am referring to dark text on light backgrounds and light text on dark backgrounds. Utilizes the same principles, and it just adheres to specific opacity levels, and they are the same opacity levels where they all use the same color black at different levels of opacity. So the active state is set to a black of 87%, inactive is 60%, and the disabled state is 38%. And one thing you might be asking yourself is, how do you actually apply this state to your typography? So one thing we can do is grab these screenshots here. So I can grab a screenshot of this and then go ahead and open up our exercise file, text legibility, paste that in there. I'm going to go ahead and also reference the text types here. And basically with all of these screenshots, we're going to be justifying how many types of color styles we'll need to provide the proper emphasis in components as we create them, and then build them out as color styles, which we'll then publish later to reuse. So here we can see, as I had iterated before, both icons and symbols have the same principles for dark text on light backgrounds and light text on dark backgrounds. It uses the same principles and levels of opacity, so meaning we only need to actually create 3 styles here. It's the active, inactive, and disabled for icons and symbols. Excuse me. Also, just providing the high emphasis, medium emphasis, and disabled state for dark text on light background. So what we can do is let this all live under a content section of color styles as well. So we can go ahead and define that as text and iconography. So that is basically what is covered in all three of these screenshots. So what we can do is just create a text style. So we can start off with this screenshot. I'm going to move these out of the way so I don't confuse any of you, since there's a lot of information in that area. I'm actually just going to grab a text style, and material design just uses Roboto. It doesn't matter what the type settings are. I'm just going to change that up real quick, and now all we're going to want to do is define the color, and this active state is set to 87%. Currently the color is set to 100, so I'm just going to change that input field. What we can do is just select that style icon, and you'll notice that we can go ahead and click on create style, and then I'm going to type in text and iconography, and this naming convention is going to be the header, so we know how to utilize that in the color panel. So I'm going to just select active here, and then you can also specify the percentage if you want designers to be able to read that right off the bat as they're looking at the name of the color style, or you can remove it. I'm just going to remove it and select create style. I have now created that text style, which is exactly what I want for any active icons or other symbols. And then we're going to go ahead and duplicate this. And once that is duplicated, I'm going to detach the style and just specify the inactive state, which is very simple. All we have to do is change the opacity once more to 60%, and that represents the inactive state of any icons or other symbols. And I'm going to go ahead and create another style. And again, I just labeled that text and iconography, the category. Use the slash naming convention. And now I am going to specify inactive. And then we can also specify that this inactive state is, if I click on this edit style icon, I can add a description and go ahead and state that utilized for icons and other symbols as specified here, in case designers want to know what that color style is for, if they're not sure how to use it. That is very important. And you can go ahead and modify those properties as well later on down the road as well. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this and detach the style and set this to the opacity of 38%, and we now have the disabled state for our not only icons and other symbols, but we have the disabled state for our typography as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click the style icon again, create that style, and label it text and iconography. And now that we have that, we can go ahead and label this disabled. And now we have our three color styles. And if I go ahead and select some text again, and I go to my color styles, you'll notice that I have the text and iconography section. And here it not only gives me the name of that color style, but it'll also give me the description if there is a description, as you can see here in the tooltip as you hover over the color style. So you can understand what the usage is or description is for that color style. So that is awesome. And now that we have this active state here, it could be a matter of, there are various decisions you can make with your team as you're building out your design system, as nomenclature is extremely important when you start implementing these foundational elements in your design system. So one question that I am posing, and that you might be asking yourself as well right now, is that if these are the same values, same hex values, same opacity, and for everything here on dark text and light backgrounds and icons and other symbols, should I recreate other styles? Well, the answer is no, you don't have to. What you could do is go ahead, edit this, and specify that this, in the description, you could specify that this is also high emphasis, right? So you could specify that that is high emphasis for dark text on light backgrounds. Or better yet, what we can do is, instead of having users go to the description of the color style to identify exactly what the usage is for this color style, I'm going to go ahead and just modify the name of this. So what I'm going to do is specify that this is high emphasis, and I'm going to go ahead and put in parentheses the active state, or you could do it vice versa. And then I'm just going to save that. Now that has been saved, that is high emphasis. I'm going to go ahead and select the inactive state and ensure that I edit the name as well, and then specify medium emphasis. And once I have specified that, I will save that. And now I'm going to go ahead and select this. And disabled is just disabled. So that is fantastic. We don't actually have to rename that. And these are important decisions to make and to understand, as you can see that quickly a design system could become very polluted in terms of how you name things, not only in your design system or designs, but also in development. It's very important to really sync with your engineers and understand what they've implemented in their color palette, or that wherever that CSS file is, that Sass less file, wherever that color palette is in React, for example, as that's a very popular framework right now. Really trying to understand where those hex values lie, if they even are hex values, or are they RGBA based. These are very important questions to ask your developers if you haven't already, and to really start aligning your system with what is currently in development to really enhance the workflow amongst designers and engineers, and really start to solidify and create a unified language across design and engineering. So that is all for the dark text on light backgrounds and icons and other symbols. Next, we're going to go ahead and talk about the text types. So one thing we did miss is that we've labeled this medium emphasis and inactive for this state here, medium emphasis and inactive. We can also specify in the description that this is utilized for helper text. So I can go ahead and specify that there, and that solves my problem. And then the last text color style we need is the error text. So we need to go ahead and duplicate this, detach the style, set the opacity back to 100%, and then go ahead and set that color to red. And now that we have the color set to red, we are good to go. All we have to do is click on the style icon, click create style, and then ensure that it is under the same category as the rest of the color styles, and type in error text and create style. And we are rocking and rolling, folks. We have created all the color styles that we'll need to utilize as we continue to build out the foundation of our material design system. So if we go ahead and check these color styles out locally, and say I pull out like a rectangle and go and look at my color palette, it all lives under text and iconography and my color styles panel. I can go ahead and drag that over, and you can see that now I have this text high emphasis color style, the medium emphasis, which is also the inactive state. We also have the high emphasis, which is the active state for icons and symbols, and high emphasis pertaining to the dark text on light backgrounds. So we're ensuring that all of this content is reused and simplified, so there's no duplication of color styles, which is not necessary, nor is that necessary in development either, if you can solidify that and simplify it. And we have our error text as well, and our disabled text, which is all covered here. And that is all I have for you in the text legibility. And I do recommend that you go over the web content accessibility guidelines to really just understand this. I know there's a lot of information, but the more you read this and take notes on it, the more it'll pay off and give you an edge as a designer, as accessibility is extremely important. And I thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.